Hi everyone, it's Susan. I'm going to show you some simple watercoloring today with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I have a set of 60, which I was gifted one year, and they are amazing, but you don't need that many if you're just starting out, just so you know. So one thing I've been doing lately for all my inks is creating swatches. I'm doing up a swatch book so that when I'm whatever medium I want to work with, I can just pull out those samples and get a real true representation of what the ink will look like on the paper that I'm using. So for this I used Canson 140-pound cold press paper, watercolor paper, and I happen to have some swatches already stamped out, so I was using those. And then what I did is I do a solid color on the top, put a little bit more ink down below, and then drag it out with my water brush. That way I can see from dark to light what it'll look like. And I like to do this so that I can pull the different cards out and get an idea of the colors that I want to use, rather than just by pulling the pens out and looking at the caps of the pen. I like seeing how the color has faded out. And right here, what I'm trying to show you is that this is they're called real brush markers, and it's a real brush. It's like using a paintbrush. It's not a nib pen, that you get on some markers. It's an actual brush, which is great. So I did this for a few of the colors, just so you can see the technique here, and then I'll get into the watercoloring. No, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. I have sped this part up a little bit. So I'm using the Lily from Concord & Ninth's Lily stamp set. Stamped it onto the watercolor paper, same as the swatches. And then I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. First off, I was going to use pink, and then for some reason I decided to change my mind and use brown. I know, some of you are probably shaking your head like, brown, Lily, but I like it. Don't be afraid to try different colors. It's fun, that's the whole idea. Just have fun. So I made another swatch card just to be sure. I wanted to see how the brown faded out as I added water to it, and yeah, I really liked it, so that's what I went with. Okay, so now for the watercoloring. It's super simple. Just take the marker, start in where you want the darkest part of the flower to be, add your ink there, and then blend out to the outer edges of the flower. It's that simple. It'll get lighter towards the end where the natural light would be hitting the flower anyway. Now, I'm not a watercolor expert by any means, but some simple things that I've learned is to try to imagine where the light source is hitting the object, and that's where you want your lightest shades to be. I don't always get it right, but I have fun when I'm doing it. So I figure if I'm having fun, that's all that matters. So I've sped this part up, but I'm doing the same steps on every petal. I start in the center of the flower, add my ink there, use my water brush to drag the ink out to the tips of the petal. So as I was doing the coloring, I decided I wanted to do some shading with darker gray. So I pulled out another marker, made a color swatch, and just see what it would look like with the water added to it, and went with that one. So before adding the next color, just touch your paper, make sure it's dry. If it's not, take a heat tool to it if you have one, and make sure it's dry. It's easier to build up the color that way. I find if I don't, and then I get a little bit of mud looking. Anyway, so take the shading color, add it to the areas where you want the shade, just a little bit. So a little bit goes a long way. And then just blend it out with your water brush, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. So to finish off the watercoloring part of this card, what I like to do is either with a light gray, which is what I do on this card, or sometimes a light blue, is add a wash all around the image that I've colored. So to do this, grab a stamping block, or I grabbed the plastic sheet from a stamp set, rub a little bit of ink on there from your pen, use your water brush, add a little bit of water, and pick up the ink and just spread it around the image. It's just a wash of color. It's pretty simple. So to finish this card off, I cut it out with a stitched rectangle die, and then added that to a piece of black cardstock with just the tiniest frame around, I think an 1/8 of an inch. Stamped part of the sentiment in black straight onto the card, and then heat embossed the rest of the sentiment with white embossing powder onto black cardstock. Added that to the card with craft foam, and added the whole thing to a white card base with a piece of craft foam. So I hope you're inspired to get out your watercolors and give it a try. And remember, the most important thing is have fun. So thanks so much for joining me. And if you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you would join and hit that bell so you'd be notified as when I make new videos. Thanks for coming by.